let's talk about what if your dog doesn't come when you call them. The most effective tool for establishing a reliable off-leash recall is the e-collar. So by this point, your dog should already be e-collar conditioned. And through the e-collar conditioning process, we teach the dogs how to turn off pressure. So we teach them, if they feel the stimulation, as soon as they start coming back to us, it turns off, it goes away. So when is it appropriate to use the e-collar? First, we have to assess if our dog is confused or if they're blowing you off. Let's talk about confusion. There's a bunch of reasons that your dog could be confused. One reason is that you're not giving the command correctly. So if you mumble the command, your dog may not either hear you or acknowledge it as a command. They might just think you're talking. So remember to say the command clearly, because you can't correct them if they don't hear you or if they don't understand what you're asking them to do. 7 come, and I'm talking and blah, 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 7 come, blah, 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 right? So I said 7 come, but I didn't say it in the right tone, so he didn't acknowledge it. So it's not fair for me to use a correction at that point. However, if I say 7 come, yes, awesome. It would have been fair for me to use it if he had blown me off in that situation. If you give the command loud enough, you say it in the right tone, and you don't see any change in behavior from your dog doesn't turn and acknowledge you. You know, let's say they're sniffing the ground, you call them, they just continue to sniff the ground, and again, you're 100% certain they heard you. Fondue, come.
Remember, your dog should respond within less than 1 second, so by this point, we should have seen some sort of change in behavior or effort. If you don't see that and you're positive your dog heard you and they're not confused, that's when it's fair to give a correction.
All right, so this is the process for correcting your dog if they don't come when you call them. So first you're gonna call them, and you're gonna give them about 1 second to respond. If you don't see them making any effort to come back to you, then you're gonna say no, and immediately after saying no, you're gonna start tapping the button. Now you're not gonna stop pressing the button until your dog starts to move towards you. So as soon as they start to move in your direction, you're gonna stop pressing it, and then you're gonna start praising your dog. You're gonna praise them until they get to you, and then once they get to you, remember they have to stay with you, and at that point you can give them a treat. So as I'm working with the dog, I'm gonna be holding the remote by the microphone so that you guys can hear when I'm pressing the button, so you guys know when I'm turning the stim on and when I'm turning it off. So you're gonna hear this sound when I'm clicking it. Atlas, come. No, no, Atlas, come. Atlas, come. Good. No, Atlas, come. Good. Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy. Good boy. Atlas, come. No. Atlas, come. Good. Yes. Awesome.
All right, so let's recap this video. First, I'm gonna call Atlas.
Atlas, come.
Then I'm gonna give him about 1 second to respond. Here I'm looking for some kind of change in behavior. I'm looking for him to acknowledge me, to turn his head towards me. I'm looking for something. Since he doesn't, he completely ignores me. Then I say no and start tapping the button.
No, no, Atlas, come. Atlas, come.
As soon as he starts to move in my direction, I stop tapping and then start praising.
Good. No, Atlas, come. Good. Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy. Good boy. One is a flyby. So a flyby is when you call your dog and they start to come back to you, but when they get to you, instead of stopping, they keep going, they run past you. Brenna, come! So we don't want this. So The timing of when you would correct your dog is as soon as they leave that 2-foot bubble, right? So they come back and then they pass you. Once they get further than about 2 feet, at that point you're gonna say no, you're gonna start pressing the button and then recall them back to you. Turn it off as soon as they start to move back. Brenna, come. No, Brenna, come. Good girl, nice. Excellent. Okay, if your dog runs past you just a couple feet and then stops and then reorients back to you, that's okay. Brenna, come. Brenna. Good girl, yes. So a flyby is when your dog runs past you and then just keeps going. They don't even stop and start to come back. So what Brenna did there was okay. It was kind of gray area. I didn't correct her for it. I gave her a chance because I saw her slowing down. Another thing we don't want our dogs doing is veering off. So this would be if you recall your dog, they start to come back, but then something else catches their attention, they get distracted, and they veer off course and they start going towards that. 7, come. As soon as you see your dog veering off course, you're gonna say no, start pressing the button and recalling them. Turn it off as soon as they move in your direction. 7, come. No. Good boy. Hey. Another possibility is for your dog to stop short. So this means they come back to you, but they stop more than 3 feet away from you. 7, come. Good boy. That was a good choice, buddy. So instead of just correcting your dog right there, it's much better to move further away from them and then correct them so that you're making their mistake more obvious to them. 7, come. Good boy. That was a good choice, buddy. No. Good boy. So if in their mind they think they're close enough but they're getting corrected, then it's a little bit unfair to them. So it's going to make it clear if you move away from them. So let's talk about why to say no. The reason you're gonna say no before you start pressing the button is so that in the future, you don't have to use the e-collar when your dog's listening. You can just say no. But if you're watching this video, most likely your dog doesn't respect the word no, meaning if you call your dog and they don't come back, if you just start yelling no at them, they probably aren't going to change their behavior. So what you need to do is you need to charge the word no. You need to give it power. And the way to do that is by attaching a correction to the word no. So you're gonna say no, and then you're gonna start pressing the button. And if you do this enough times, eventually when your dog hears you say no, they're going to respect that and they're going to change their behavior. So what's an appropriate reaction? So let's talk about how should your dog react when you're clicking the button, when you're stimming them. Every dog's different. Some dogs are pretty stoic, like they don't really have much of a reaction when you're stimming. Some dogs are more dramatic. Some dogs will vocalize. Some dogs will, do different things with their body language. So it kind of varies from dog to dog, but ultimately an appropriate reaction is for them to be changing their behavior. So if they're off doing something, you call them, they ignore you, you say no. As soon as you start clicking that button, you should see some sort of change in behavior. If they just keep going about their business, you don't see any change in their behavior, any change in their body language, that probably means that the level is too low. It could also mean the e-collar's not turned on. It could be a variety, or maybe you're pressing the wrong button. But if it's turned on and you're pressing the right button and they're not reacting to it, you're not seeing any change in behavior, they're not acknowledging you, they're not making any effort to come towards you, probably means that the level's set too low. Buddy, gosh. Hi. 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 Oh, I didn't see you there. So, let's talk about what level to use. Every dog's different. Some dogs are sensitive, some dogs are less sensitive. So we'll go over with you in the lessons what level is appropriate for your dog. But most dogs don't work at one single level for everything. Most dogs work between a range. So some dogs work between a range of, let's say, 10 to 20. Some dogs might work between a range of 20 to 50. Other dogs, it might be 20 to 100. Like I said, every dog's different. So when would you use a low level? When would you use a high level? As a general rule of thumb, when dogs are in an excited or high arousal state, they have higher pain tolerance. If someone were to pinch me right now, really, really hard, it would probably hurt. But if I just escaped from a burning building and I'm highly adrenalized and someone were to come up and pinch me really hard, I might not even feel it. So if your dog is chasing after a squirrel and they're highly adrenalized, they're probably not going to feel or respond to their low level. Now, if they're in a calmer state, they're not highly aroused, you might get away with using a lower level. That's a general rule of thumb. Another reason you may need to use a higher level is if your dog has gotten into the habit of blowing you off. Meaning, if you're having to use the e-collar excessively, like every single time you call your dog, you have to press the button to get them to come back, that means you have been nagging your dog at a low level too much. The reason that we use the e-collar is so that eventually we don't have to use it. Your dog should be motivated to avoid the correction. The correction should be aversive enough that your dog doesn't want it to happen. Therefore, they come when you call them so that they can avoid the correction from happening. But if the correction isn't aversive and if the consequence isn't high enough, they're just gonna wait until you click the button, and that's not what we want. So we'll go over with you what level to use for your individual dog, because just keep in mind, some dogs are sensitive and you need to be careful about using higher levels in certain situations. If you're using too high of a level at the wrong moment, that can also be bad for your dog. So we don't want them to overreact, and we also don't want them to ignore it. We need a balance. So there's a couple different ways to increase the level on the e-collar. You can do it manually, which is my preferred method, as you're clicking the button. So let's say we start off at 10. All of a sudden, I see my dog's chasing the squirrel, so now I'm gonna start clicking the button and turning the level up simultaneously. So there you can see the level going up as I'm clicking it. So if this is too hard for you, you can use two hands. So one hand is gonna be on the dial, the other finger is gonna be clicking the button. So same thing though, I'm clicking, turning. So that's one method. The other method is to use the boost button. So that's the red button on the side. Right now you can see the boost is set at +5. If I click the red button, it jumps up to 25. And then it goes back down to 20 after I stop clicking it. Now you can set the boost to be higher than +5. You can set it to +20, so then it would boost by 20. Now if you dial the level up because your dog is chasing a squirrel or they're really, really highly aroused by something, you dial the level up, you correct them. Most of the time what that does is it will subdue your dog, it will bring them into a lower arousal state. So once that happens, then dial the level back down. Once you get your dog in a lower arousal state, they're not as amped, you don't need to correct them at such a high level anymore, most likely. So don't use too high of a level if you don't need to, if they're not highly adrenalized or excited or blowing you off. Remember, don't just rely on the e-collar to motivate your dog to come back. We use a balanced training system. So we don't just use negative reinforcement, we also use positive reinforcement. So when your dog finally does start coming back, don't just be silent and boring, be exciting and be encouraging at that point. Remember to praise them. And also, if your dog likes food, if they're highly food motivated, don't be stingy with your treats. Pay them. when they come back to you. The more you're paying your dog, the less likely you're going to have to rely on the e-collar to get them to come back. Atlas, come. Good boy, yeah, buddy, yeah. Atlas, come. Good boy, yeah, buddy, good. Yes, awesome. 7, come. Yes, awesome, good.